The other day, a very good friend of mine said, "You know what, Argent? I cannot define your tastes. They make no sense to me. I have literally no idea, be it a video game, movie, TV show, whatever, whether you're going to like it or not." And to that, I said, "Thank you." Now, before we get into Dead Space, the remake, the 2023 one, just wanted to talk a bit about my history with this franchise. So I remember I played Dead Space 1. I can't remember if it was the year it came out or the year after it came out. It was a very long time ago. I was kind of excited and interested in it because it ticked a lot of boxes. It was sci-fi, it was horror, it was a third-person shooter. It had RPG elements combined with shooter elements. It also looked exactly like, at least in terms of gameplay, Resident Evil 4. And if you're going to take the gameplay from something, Resident Evil 4 is an amazing game. So that's not a bad one to copy. They just looked like a lot of really neat things about it. So I played it. I didn't really like it very much. I thought it was boring, generic, kind of lame. I can't even honestly remember if I finished it or not. So I was not very impressed by Dead Space 1. And then I just kind of left the franchise. I never really considered it again. I just thought it was some like hokey, generic thing that kept getting sequels. I thought it was like maybe the Call of Duty of like survival horror games. I just didn't really give it the time of day. Now, a couple months back, I was watching some videos. There's a channel called Media Zealot, and he has a couple series. He has civilizations too stupid to exist, villains too stupid to win, and stuff like that. So I was looking through his list of villains, and I watched the Resident Evil one, and then it had Unitology. I'm like, you know what? I think that's from Dead Space, isn't it? So I watched that, and I was like, you know what? This actually sounds pretty interesting. So I started watching some lore videos that explained the plot, the background, the history of Unitology, the Dead Space universe, all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, you know what? There's actually a lot of lore here, and it sounds pretty interesting, and I should give this series another try. However, the original game was really old, like from 2008. And while honestly, to me at least, that's not that old that I wouldn't be able to play it, I was just like, you know what? I kind of wish that there was like a newer version of this, that there was like one with modern graphics, modern sound design, that took advantage of all the quality of life improvements that have happened since then. But this series has been dead for a decade. I'm sure there's nothing like that. And then I was looking through the lore videos, and they mentioned Dead Space 2023, and I'm like, what the heck is that? And so I looked at it, I'm like, oh, they did a remake of Dead Space just when I was interested in getting into it. So let's try it out. So if you want to try out this game, EA has a subscription service you can get through Steam. I think it's like $3 a month. So and you just download the games and you have unlimited access to them as long as you have the subscription. If you want to play this game, I recommend just getting it the EA subscription for a month. You can play this full AAA game and then cancel it if you want for $3, and it's completely legal and you're supporting the developers. So I downloaded Dead Space Remake, and I'm like, you know what? Let's give this a try. How is it? And very quickly, I was just saying to myself, you know what? This game is really good. It's really, really good. It's way better than like how I remembered it being. And I think it's one of those things where as I've gotten older and my tastes have kind of changed a bit, this is something that appeals to me more now than it used to. Like I remember the best example of that is I didn't like Blade Runner when I watched it when I was like 14, but when I watched it again in my mid to late 20s, I absolutely loved it and I had a way higher opinion of it. It went from being like a 6 out of 10 to being like a 9 out of 10. And this is kind of similar to that. It was something, it kind of took me by surprise. I was kind of shocked by how much I loved it. And it's something I would definitely recommend. It's certainly been getting good reviews. Now, I haven't really looked into it because honestly, I don't want it to ruin my experience of playing the game. But from my understanding, they added a lot of woke stuff into this remake. They made a lot more characters mixed race. They made Nicole look substantially older. I think Isaac is significantly older now. I think the funniest thing is they introduced gender neutral bathrooms, which is kind of ironic in a sense because you have this like dystopian, apocalyptic, horrific future, and they felt a better way to represent that was to have gender neutral bathrooms. Like that was a better representation of this dystopian future. I don't think they put very much thought into it, but I tried to avoid looking at any of that because I just wanted to enjoy the game on its own merit. So, for those of you who don't know Dead Space and what it is, let's just talk a bit about the story. So, our main character is Isaac Clarke, obviously named after Arthur C. Clarke and Isaac Asimov, tribute to those sci fi writers. And what makes him interesting is he's like a middle aged systems engineer. He's not a soldier. He's not like necessarily a heroic person with all this military training and all this background. He's not exactly an everyman either, though, because he probably does have a like a genius or near genius level intellect. I think he graduated the top of his class. He's kind of stuck in his current position because he wasn't able to go to the best school because his mother joined a cult and spent all the money, all the family's money that he needed to go to a higher level school. But he's not a fighter. He's not someone with the bat with that kind of background, and you see this very much throughout the game whenever he's doing like melee attacks, they're very crude and kind of awkward. He can't really do combat rolls or dodges or anything kind of like that. He's definitely in really good shape. I mean, he's an engineer who has to crawl through spaceships and all that kind of stuff. So I'm sure he takes care of himself. But he's not a soldier, and that kind of translates to a lot of the gameplay. Most of the weapons you get are just tools. Like the most basic one is the plasma cutter. It's used to cut things. You have the line gun, which is used to like uh like blow open holes in like a mining wall and then to get the minerals out. You have the contact beam that's for shattering rock. You have the Ripper, which is probably my personal favorite gun. That's like a diamond tipped tungsten saw that's once again used for it. The game takes place on a mining ship, so with the exception of the pulse rifle, all of this stuff is just kind of these makeshift items, and Isaac is having to use them. And fortunately, he knows how to use them because he's an engineer. And something I like is that the fact that he is an engineer is not something that's kind of just foisted to the side. A lot of the game, indeed most of it, is you running back and forth across the ship trying to fix system after system to try to keep the ship from crashing and exploding, like refueling the engines, getting life support back up and running, the communications array, all kinds of stuff like that. And you do feel very much like you are a systems engineer who's desperately trying to fix all this stuff. And it is kind of a very cool and unique environment. So the game starts off with Isaac and the rest of his team who work for the Concordance Extraction Corporation. Apparently, in the future, humanity's run out of resources and they've been reduced to destroying planetoids and taking the valuable minerals out of it. And the Concordance Extraction Corporation has all these planet crackers that basically just demolish the planet and then suck in the various parts of it and extract the minerals from it. And these kind of activities can take years and years to do. Now, his girlfriend, and I've seen some people refer to her as being his fiancee, Nicole is a doctor on board the Ishimura, which is the oldest and I believe the largest of the planet cracking fleet. And there's been some problems on the Ishimura with various systems failing, so they call in Isaac and the rest of his team to go and try and fix it. Of course, he's very excited about getting to see his girlfriend. The last time they talked, he was really he got really angry at her and started yelling at her and stuff like that. And he has this desire to kind of make amends, to apologize to her, to tell her how much he loves her, and stuff like that. When they arrive, it becomes very clear that something is horribly wrong. The crew have mutated into necromorphs, these like horrendous, horrifically terrifying, mutated. I don't even really know how to describe necromorphs. You probably just have to look it up to see what it looks like. And we're introduced to kind of the game's gimmick. Necromorphs, you have to kill them by blowing their limbs off, which is kind of the opposite of how most games work, where you're supposed to shoot center mass or shoot the head. And because a lot of the equipment you have is mining equipment, it's designed for crushing things, for tearing things, for cutting things. Particularly the plasma cutter is very good for blowing limbs off. So it is this kind of interesting gameplay, and I do find it really fun, and kind of intense in some of the parts of the game where you're getting surrounded or you have to try to fight off multiple enemies, and it can be kind of hard to remember to shoot the arms, as you just kind of want to pull the trigger and just try to kill the thing that's coming at you, and you kind of have to unlearn the reflex to aim for the head or to aim for center mass like you do in pretty much every other game. So I find that kind of cool, and also it's interesting. Like if you cut off certain parts of the necromorphs, it changes the way that they move. They might start going on like their back claws instead of their feet. And there's a very good variety of necromorphs in all different shapes and sizes. There's even more in future games, but they are legitimately creepy. And the game, I think, does a very good job of keeping the pressure on. Like you never know when they're going to jump out. They're all throughout the ship. They're all in the ventilation, the various systems, and stuff like that. The difficulty, I played this game on normal. I thought normal was a good difficulty. I didn't find it particularly challenging after the first couple hours. I often will find games like this, and this is true for stuff that similar stuff like Castlevania or Resident Evil 4 or something like, or actually FromSoft games. I find they kind of have an inverse difficulty curve, where at the beginning you only will have like one underpowered weapon, and while there's fewer enemies, you can't really adjust to a particular play style. Like I like to use the Ripper, for instance, and so for it to be good when I got it, I had to save a bunch of upgrade points called nodes, so that when I got it, I could upgrade it immediately and make it good. And some weapons you don't get until very late in the game, and if that's your favorite weapon and that's what you want to make your mainstay, it can be a bit difficult. The plasma cutter is the all-round best weapon in the game, but once again, it starts off pretty bad, but it rapidly gets better. And I mean, you should get more powerful as the game goes on, and you should be able to take on more enemies. I just find sometimes, particularly like I said with FromSoft games, I find it way harder in the first couple of hours. And then by the time you get to the end of the game where you can customize your play style, you can upgrade stuff, it gets much easier. And I find Dead Space definitely has that type of difficulty curve. And I know the only times I really got frustrated with this game a little bit was in the first part of it. Also, just once again having to relearn where to shoot enemies because it's so instinctive to aim for, like I said, center mass. So the plot itself is you and your team are trying to figure out what the hell happened here. Why are people turning into necromorphs? What happened to the crew? What happened to the ship? What is all this madness? And it kind of reminds me a lot of BioShock, where you go through and there's audio logs and you gradually kind of figure out the mystery of the Ishimura, what wound up happening. You follow kind of the individual stories of different crew members. Nicole frequently shows up and talks to Isaac, and she's kind of the princess that you're trying to get to at the end of the game. That's Isaac's drive, that he needs to get to Nicole. He needs to apologize to her. He needs to do that. Just a side note, sorry, because I forgot to mention earlier. I like Isaac's suit a lot because his engineering suit just looks very like crude and utilitarian. Like he has the helmet, but if you look at it, it very clearly isn't designed to be proper armor because it has plates and stuff on it and things like that, but it's not designed clearly to stop things like bullets. I mean, it can stop bullets, but that's not primarily what it's designed for. It very much looks like something that's designed to stop like gas, like gas that shoots out, or rocks that fall on you, or some sort of pneumatic thing that swings around. I'm sure it would protect from that decently well, but it's definitely not normal armor. Anyway, so you're going through the ship trying to figure it out. You learn that a lot of people aren't who you thought they were. You learn that there's like a big conspiracy going on. I'm not going to go through too many spoilers, but there's stuff involving aliens, religious cults, and stuff like that. And there's a number of very good twists as you go through the game. Something I like, I'm just to get back to it, I like kind of the realism of it. Now, obviously, the necromorphs aren't realistic, but it's something I've said a lot when I talk about like OG Evangelion versus the rebuilds. I like how dirty and run down everything is, and how a lot of the stuff just barely works, and a lot of it is just kind of crude and patched together. It looks like what you don't like when you go down the street and you look at cars, some of them are new, but some of them will just have a bunch of components that are kind of mashed together. A lot of the time, if you look at machinery, some of it's newer than others, other parts and stuff like that. And I do appreciate that it's not all like this slick, sophisticated, clean. A lot of it is just this very utilitarian, old, decaying industrial design. From my understanding, the Ishimura is going to be retired after this planet cracking, so it's at the very end of its lifespan, and it definitely you can tell. And the necromorphs aren't helping. So throughout the game, just systems are breaking down, and as an engineer, you have to go fix them. You have to go refuel the engine. Like I said, get life support working, fix the communications array, and they at least do these in like somewhat engineering actual things. Like you have to rearrange the various panels to realign the communications array. And there's just a lot of gameplay. I think the coolest single thing in this game when it comes to gameplay is the zero G parts. Now, zero G parts are generally speaking something I don't like, and I would normally complain about something like that being a gimmick. But in this game, they're actually really fun. Isaac's suit has jets in it, so he's able to fly around in zero G. It is kind of cool, like to just go through parts of the ship. In zero gravity, you have magnetized boots, and there's a lot of puzzles that take advantage of that. And some of the boss fights are done in zero G, and it just feels very natural, if that makes sense. Like it feels like it's a logical part of the game. It doesn't feel like something that's just tacked on to try to be um like to make the game a little more complicated, or what, like I said, to add in a gimmick like quick time events are, or something like that. Also, you can turn off quick time events in this game, which is really really nice because I hate quick time events. But once again, it feels like you're going through a falling apart starship, and you're going to have to the gravity wells have broken down in some areas. In some areas, you're going to have to disable it to do some repairs and move things that you wouldn't be able to move normally. It's just a lot of fun, and I don't find those levels get super confusing. They're disorienting, yes, but they're not like painfully disorienting to the point where you're running like you'll just run around for hours having no idea what the hell you're doing. Once again, no spoilers, but I was kind of surprised how emotionally invested I got in the game and how kind of on the edge of my seat I was, even though giving I know how it ended. I didn't know any of the particular details. And the last part of the game where you get to go down on the planet, and we get into something I always like where things start just getting more and more surreal, and you're not sure what's real or not, and it starts to get kind of higher concept and more metaphysical. I really appreciate that, and I thought that that was really fun. The last boss I thought was garbage, and was not very well designed, but the rest of the ending is really good. They also added in a surprise or a secret ending that's only in the remake. That is really cool, and it also changes some of the dialogue elsewhere in the game. Something else that's nice is they gave Isaac a voice. He didn't have a voice in the first Dead Space game. Now you could say he was a silent protagonist, but he had a voice actor in 2 and 3. So it's like, which one are you going to go with? Are you going to go with him being a silent protagonist or not? It makes a lot of the conversations sound a lot more natural, that he actually responds to people. It can get kind of awkward, like in Metro, where Artyom doesn't talk and people like are just yelling at him and he doesn't respond to them. Like his wife is like begging him for help, and like he's like, I'm just not going to respond to you because I'm Artyom and I'm a Sigma male, and be gone thought. So that was a big strength of it. Overall, just it's just everything about this game I feel succeeds on every level. The graphics are great, the sound design's great, the pacing's good, the difficulty's good, the combat's good. It has a very unique ambience to it. It has a very unique feel to it. I'm gonna unironically give this a 10 out of 10. It's very rare that I give something a 10 out of 10. The last thing that actually came close is probably the ironically enough, the Marvel Spider-Man game, and I know I'm going to get a bunch of downvotes for that. The first one, which I thought kind of did absolutely everything right as well, and was everything you could possibly want out of a Spider-Man game. I think this is pretty much everything you could possibly want out of a um, survival horror sci-fi game. I really recommend the Dead Space remake. Like I said, I think it does pretty much everything right, and I definitely recommend checking it out. Hopefully, we'll get a remake of Dead Space 2 and 3. I've been playing through Dead Space 2, and it definitely has aged compared to the remake. And I'm looking forward to when they, if and when they make a new version of it. So that's the review. God bless. Definitely check out the Dead Space remake.